Mark with Precision here, trying to give an update on this messy project here. This is behind Redmond 274, Redmond, I believe, which is that house right there. I believe that person is who called this in. Don't think it was going into their yard or anything, but this entire area here, all 5 of these valve boxes, or 4, I guess there is, were full of water, and I pumped them out to try to figure out, where some of the water might have been coming from to see if there was a leak. I thought I noticed a spot on this isolation valve on this 2-inch main line right here, but I think if you look at the recap of the, not the ticket, but the repair, the billing, I did make reference to when the ground is that saturated, it'll create these little fissures where the water will start seeping through, and it actually looks like it's leaking, but it's not. And so I shut that valve off to try to isolate and try to figure out what was leaking and what wasn't leaking. And then I dug all this up just because, and you'll see in the other video how low this whole area was. This is like the lowest spot in this entire terrain. It goes uphill from there, and then it slightly goes downhill eventually as you get to about the halfway point down there, but right off the bat here it goes up again. And so this is a low spot. Not only is it just generally a low spot, but it was also like 2 inches kind of sunken down. And so the tops of the valve boxes were about 2 inches below the sidewalk. And so then that created this issue where when it gets that wet and this whole area just gets soggy, especially with this kind of soil, it just turns to this soggy mud. The compression from any kind of equipment, whether it's the mowers that are constantly going over it, or, I know we've been installing some trees. There's one here that they're going to need to do. Ironically, I'm going to try to steer them away, literally and figuratively, away from, this particular area. Hopefully it'll be fairly discernible that wouldn't be a good idea, but to come in from that other side when they do that. But for the time being, I thought it would be a good idea to dig all this up and expose it, every joint, not just so I can see if there's any seepage at all, just because sometimes it's so hard. And then it had all this fabric that was between the boxes and the valves, and so it was impossible to dig, so it was difficult to cut all that out initially. But I got it all out, and then I was able to dig all this up and expose all these joints. And so there's nothing on the main line, which is the good news, that's leaking. And then I tried each control valve, and amazingly there's no leaks on the laterals either. But I think what my plan was to raise this up, at the same time facilitating a more conducive environment for future engagement with this. In case somebody needs to dig it up and repair it again, it'll be so much easier to work with, because for one thing, the pea gravel that I'm going to put in here to displace the amount of soil that would normally have been up to the top here. And I could have used that, but then it would still be kind of this soggy area just in general, because it's still generally a low spot. So I was trying to figure out a way to where if we did get some of these bigger rain events like what we've been having, and then also just with the irrigation coming on, that it would help facilitate drainage. And so that's the other reason why I dug it all up, because I'm going to displace all of this underneath these valve boxes. It's starting to rain again, and so I'm going to put some flags around this and get out of here. But so I'll work on this tomorrow and try to get the rest of this pea gravel in here. There's a gentleman from Windmill, I believe it is, construction on the north half of Greenspire. there was a house where they were working, and he had some squeegee pea gravel that he had a pile of, and I asked him if I could take some of the kind of the extra that was on the sides, kind of integrated into the hills there, and just use it for this, so that I didn't have to go back and get a load and bring it on a trailer or whatever. So that'll help me out a lot. I can just get some buckets and bring it. I'll just get a 2-wheel cart and wheel it in here and put this pea gravel in here, and it'll help out a lot. In the meantime, you know, I thought for sure I would check every valve, and there's no leaks, so that's the good news. But as you can see too, there is a void underneath this, which, you know, at first glance I was thinking that must be where there's a leak, but I have this valve wide open. There's no sign of any leak on that main line. And then I ran this valve that feeds this, that goes over to the zone on the other side, and I ran it for several minutes, and there's no leak on it either. So evidently it's just a place, just from all the collective moisture that you know, just funnels down into this hole, more or less. And you can see I've got it flagged over here because this was full of water yesterday too, and so this is sinking on the other side. So this whole thing needs to be like mud jacked or something. And I don't know if that's something our company can do. I don't know if that's something that we've delved into, but it would definitely be worth looking into that, because from the looks of it, there's no sleeve underneath this sidewalk, and even though it's fairly thick, it'll accommodate, you know, like snow equipment and stuff like that. It's why they make it so thick, and that helps support it to some extent. But it's never a good idea to have something under like concrete or asphalt without a sleeve. Even with this, you know, relatively narrow walk, it'd still be a pain to have to repair that. So yeah, so in lieu of that, it would be good to get some material underneath there to jack that up a little bit, for lack of a better term, just to fill that void, to help keep that, also help this from settling so much. So, you know, all of those things will factor in, but in the long run it's going to help, and this is like an investment of time to help facilitate, you know, future relatively having no issues with this, hopefully. These fittings, I was kind of concerned about them because they're Schedule 40 male adapters going off of a main line, so they're constantly under pressure into these valves. That is definitely a no-no. I've been doing this for 43 years. I've probably replaced 100 of those, you know, like an average of a couple per year. Not saying these will fail, they don't all fail, but I've seen enough of them. They have an inherent weak spot because this is a thinner plastic than the Schedule 80, the gray ones, or what we used to do is use a Schedule 80 nipple and then use a coupling to attach, and then that creates like the same kind of strength. But these will shear easily, and they'll definitely shear when the dirt is this soggy and then the mowers are going over it, and then exponentially more when there's valve boxes that were right on top of it. So I'm also bringing up the valve boxes, so that's going to help. Also, all of these rocks, we used to call these donies, including this big one right here. This one was actually right on top of that pipe right there. And so you can imagine how every time somebody would drive over that and it hammers down. I'm actually shocked that those male adapters are not sheared just from that already. But what I'm going to do will help facilitate that not happening, or at least slowing down that whole process. So hopefully that will take care of that, and I'll have all this cleaned up hopefully by tomorrow if it's not still raining. But right now I'm going to get out of here because it's starting to come down, although it looks like it might clear out fairly quickly, so we'll see what happens here.